afternoon is something.
Good afternoon, everybody. We're going to give folks a few more minutes to trickle in. It's wonderful to see so many of you here this afternoon. We're going to work on the sound. How does this sound? Is it too loud, not loud enough? Does it make me sound like Adele on a great night at a concert? Or, okay.
No, it doesn't.
No, okay, thanks, Keith. Good. All right. We'll give folks a few more minutes. I'm John Bliss, the moderator. It's always an honor to be given this task by you, the voters. We run this meeting based on Robert's Rules of Order. And in the past, you have very understandingly given me leave to ask our neighbor and friend Joe Fromberger to serve as parliamentarian. If it is okay with you, the voters, I'm going to ask Joe to do that again this year. Joe, would you serve as our?
I would be happy to.
Thank you for being our parliamentarian. As I always say, Joe has forgotten more about Robert's Rules of Order than I'll ever know. So it's good to have him here in case we run into any snags. I think I'll just give folks a few more minutes. I feel like I heard a car. Yes? So the first thing we will do before I gavel us into the start of the meeting is I will ask you, the body, to stand, and we will say the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. You may be seated. I gavel this meeting into order. Once again, thank you for being here, and thank you to the Select Board for being creative about rescheduling. I think this is a really good solution. Certainly none of us, even though the road crew did a great job on Saturday, it's probably a good thing that we weren't trying to get here for a meeting on Saturday. As we often do before we get into the business of our meeting, I want to read the names of folk who have passed in the preceding year. These are friends and neighbors in Andover who have died in the preceding year. If anyone, this is a list compiled by Jeanette, who knows all things, but if perchance she has forgotten or if I forget anyone, I will give a little pause at the end, and if anyone has another name of someone they would like remembered, I will ask you to shout their name out. So these are friends and neighbors who have passed. Sylvia Meyer, Betsy Ungvarsky, Teresa Coate, Agnes Doherty, George Spalding. We hold them in our hearts. Remember their many gifts to us. And thank you for joining us in that moment. Also, before we begin the meeting for business, I want to make a couple of reminders about sort of the conduct of the meeting. Thank you to Rebecca, who is here from Okemo Valley TV. So she is manning or personing the controls there. We also have our Zoom meeting going on, and Jeanette reminds me that technically speaking, folks on Zoom are not supposed to be voting when we have a floor vote situation. So we're going to remind them of that. It looks like we have Representative Padilla, Cynthia Prairie, Lenore Schumann, and Maddie Bowden, and someone who is just simply Dude. Another reminder about voting and having one's voice heard in the meeting. So, and again, our parliamentarian will confirm this. Technically, in a meeting for business run by Robert's rules, the suggestion is to the body, you, the voting body, is that when you have a comment or a question, that the first time that you have a comment to make, that you rise. You introduce yourself, because thank goodness we got a lot of new people here. It's really wonderful to see new faces, new citizens of Andover. This is really wonderful, but everybody doesn't know everybody, even though a lot of us know a lot of us. And this year, particularly now in the new age of Zoom, it would be really helpful to the tech folk and to the Zoom folk if you would come to this mic. So it makes standing to bring a comment or ask a question a little more cumbersome, but it would be really helpful if you would do that, because then it'll come up better on the Zoom meeting. Another technicality is that we certainly welcome the voices of everyone at the meeting, but we ask our friends and neighbors who are not voters in the town of Andover to refrain from voting on the floor votes that come up for citizens. That is a right that is specifically for full-time Andover residents. Let's see, anything else we have to do? It's been said by a number of people, including me, that democracy is more than just counting votes. It is an honor to be your moderator, and it is a great pleasure to welcome you to this gathering of simple and important representative democracy. A gathering unlike any happening anywhere in the world. So we are very fortunate and blessed to be able to do that now. So you all have your town reports, and you should have a copy of the warning. And I will simply read the preamble and then get to the first order of business. The legal voters of the town of Andover in the county of Windsor, state of Vermont, are hereby warned and notified to meet on Saturday, March 4th, 2023, here in the town hall or via Zoom, to act on the following articles. Article 1, to elect a moderator for a term of 1 year ending on June 30th, 2024. Current moderator John Bliss. Are there nominations?
Mr. Moderator,
Joe.
I would nominate Jonathan Bliss for moderator for the ensuing year.
Is there a second?
I'll second it.
Hank is seconded. Other nominations? And Joe, if you would just instruct us on how we might do this most efficiently.
There being no other nominations, Mr. Moderator, I would move that nominations be closed and that the clerk cast one ballot for Jonathan Bliss as moderator.
Did everyone hear Joe? We didn't follow my advice there. He was not speaking at the mic, but I presume you heard him.
I'll talk loud.
All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, nay. Jonathan Bliss is elected. Thank you, friends. Article number 2, to elect all town officers as required by law. And I'm going to run through them quickly, and then we'll go back and take them one at a time. And Jeanette has very graciously given me a little bit of a roadmap here. So these are the officers that we are electing today by floor vote. Town treasurer for a 1-year term, currently held by Jeanette Haight. Town clerk for a 3-year term, currently held by Jeanette Haight. Select board member for a 3-year term, and this is the position currently held by Melissa Gates Perry. Melissa, would you raise your hand, please?
Yeah.
There she is. Select board member for one year remaining of a 3-year term, currently held by Susan Leader. Susan, would you raise your hand? Thank you. Select Board member for a one-year term currently held by Richard Griswold. Richard, would you raise your hand? Select Board member for a one-year term currently held by Robin Trask. There's Robin at the end. Auditor for a 3-year term, Bob Francis is not seeking re-election. Is Bob here? We think not. Okay. Lister for a 3-year term currently held by Francesca Salazar. Francesca is in the back. Thank you for raising your hand, Francesca. She is seeking a reappointment. First Constable for a 1-year term, position currently held by Lucas Trask. Lucas is raising his hand right here in the front. Thank you, Lucas. Collector of delinquent taxes for a 1-year term, currently held by Jeanette Haight. You all know Jeanette. Cemetery Commissioner for a 3-year term, currently held by Nick Baker. Nick is in the back over there. Sexton for a 1-year term, currently held by Hank Mowdy. Hank, would you raise your hand? There's Hank. All right, so we'll begin at the top. Town Treasurer for a 1-year term, currently held by Jeanette Haight. And Jeanette is seeking a reappointment. Are there nominations from the floor? Yes, Brooke.
I would nominate Jeanette for the position.
Brooke Decker has nominated Jeanette. Is there a second?
A second.
Dave Peters seconds. Are there other nominations? Joe, are you going to do your bit?
If you like, I would move, if there are no other nominations, I would move that nominations be closed and that the clerk cast 1 ballot for Jeanette as treasurer for 1 year. Oh, for a 1-year term, yes.
1-year term. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, nay. Town Clerk for a 3-year term, currently also held by Jeanette Haight, and Jeanette is seeking a reappointment. Do we have nominations from the floor? Yes?
I nominate Jeanette Haight.
That was Francesca. Do we have a second? Jean Peters seconds. We have other nominations?
Mr. Moderator, if there are no other nominations, I would move that nominations be closed and that Jeanette Haight be elected clerk for a 3-year term.
All those not opposed signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed, nay. Jeanette is reappointed. So we get into the select board positions. The first one listed here is the position for a 3-year term currently held by Melissa. Do we have nominations from the floor? Yes, Lucas.
Nominate Melissa.
Lucas has nominated Melissa.
A second.
Brooke has seconded. Are we going too fast, Jeanette? I'm getting this down. Other nominations?
Nominate Jean Pettigas.
What's your name, sir?
Kevin Forbes.
Kevin Forbes nominates Jean Pettigas. Do we have a second?
I'll second it.
Okay, there's a second.
Sandy Forbes.
Sandy Forbes. Joe, a point of order. Must we vote on one before there are more nominations?
I think the proper procedure would be a paper ballot.
Okay. Joe, our parliamentarian, has suggested that a paper ballot is in order at this time, as there are 2 nominations. Do we need a vote on that, Joe, or can I just
I think
call
it's
it?
the prerogative of the moderator to declare
Okay.
a paper ballot.
All right, we will have a paper ballot. And Jeanette, how are we doing that?
Jonathan's got it right there.
John Here he comes.
He will have to hand out a piece of paper to every single registered voter here,
Okay.
but there's a question.
Yeah, Ray.
I would suggest we go through all of the positions. There may be more contested positions. We could vote all of them at the same time, rather than interrupting the meeting time after time if there's more than one contested election.
No, it wouldn't be too confusing.
I think, yeah, I hear what you're saying, and there is a kind of logic to that, Ray, but I think that people are thinking about nomination number one, nomination number two, we ought to handle that in this moment. And Hank said it's illegal, and it may very well be, so we won't do that. Yes, Susan.
Excuse my ignorance, but I'm not sure I caught the name. I know who Melissa is, but is the other person nominated here? Would they want to stand? Oh, okay, I'm sorry, I didn't catch your name, but I knew who you are. I'm sorry.
And I think, thanks, Gene, and thank you, Susan, for catching that. And I think as we have done in the past, it was okay with the voters, when we have a contested position, or a position in which several candidates have been nominated, it would be important for each of the people running for that position to just say a few words about why they'd like to be in that position. And I think we know Melissa, because she currently sits on the board, but you're surely welcome to say a few words, Melissa. But Jean, do you mind just getting up? And I think it would also be good to come to the mic, because that also brings you further into the body here. Why don't you say a few words? If you can hear him, great. If you can't, I'll hand my mic to Jean.
Can everybody hear me? Is it working? Thank you. Hi, better? My name is Gene Panicus. I live over on Middletown Road. Had property up here for 20 plus years. I moved up 3 years ago during the whole COVID rush. It was my plan to move to town anyhow. It just sped things up for me. I originally come from Connecticut. I run the Andover snowmobile trails for the town. I also am the town fire warden currently. And I think I'd just like to help out the town to move towards the future. I know there's a lot of changes, a lot of new things happening, taxes, Airbnb, all this sort of stuff that's going on. I think I may be able to offer some opposing views, some better insight, and that's kind of what I was thinking. Thank you.
Rob, what would you like to say?
All right. I'm Melissa Bates Perry. I was born and raised here. A lot of you know me. A lot of you know me for a long time. I've enjoyed being on the select board this year. I think that there are a ton of challenges for a town like Andover, and I think it's really good for us to look at what Andover needs. And I basically am a person who looks at it like any big decisions need to be made by the citizens, need to be voted on, rather than just the select board having a big wide brush that they make decisions. So that's kind of the way I look at it. I work for you. So.
I have a question.
Yes, question.
Why is her seat in question? Why are you potentially being voted out?
Oh, it's just because, oh, go ahead.
No, I think you were going to say there are terms.
Additional selected position available.
Well, there are terms, so Melissa's term is up, and she was intending to run again. But Jean's hat has been thrown in the ring, so that's the explanation for that. Yeah. Yeah.
Are we supposed to write someone's name on the piece of paper? Okay, thank you.
So, does everyone have what we're going to call a ballot and something to write with?
I'll pass this one around. I know we weren't supposed to fold them out there because it takes a long time.
Girl, I have an extra one.
Oh, I just used it.
Oh, okay.
Thank you. I might need this one.
Okay.
Okay, yes, question back here? Okay, I'd like to have order in the room, please. Silence, thank you. Yeah.
Can he stand up and be nominated for the other select board seats?
There's no reason he can't be nominated for anything in town that he'd like to be.
Okay, just to
Yeah.
clarify.
Yeah, Peter?
Question, is first name acceptable on the ballot?
I think it would be, since we have two very distinctly different names. Is that agreeable to everyone? Jean, is that agreeable to you? Okay. And Melissa?
Yes.
Okay, so what you will need to do is Jeanette will come around with something to collect your ballot. And you will need to state your name. This is why it gets a little bit cumbersome. This is the sort of less efficient part of democracy, because you need to state your name because Jeanette is tasked legislatively with making sure that if you vote, you're on the voter checklist. So you need to state your name and then drop your ballot into the boxes. If we had some music to play, we'd be playing that right now. All right. You don't want to hear that.
Susan Leader.
Is Nikki Wenger here? Were you going to ask to be recognized, to say something? Why don't you, you're good at this kind of thing. Why don't you come up? Since we have a few moments to do something else with here, if I can ask for silence.
Yeah,
Except for the interactions which need to happen as Jeanette and Jonathan ascertain identities. I'm going to introduce to you Nikki Wenger. Nikki is the Executive Director of Neighborhood Connections in Londonderry, and she has asked for some money. So I think you all know Neighborhood Connections. It's an amazing organization that works with all sorts of folks, some who are economically marginal, but not entirely. So since you are asking for money, you've come here to answer any questions the voters of Andover might have. Would you like to say anything? And then would anyone in the room like to ask if you might have any questions?
Are you using me as sort of the void here?
Exactly.
That's fine. I'm fine with that. This is great. So hi, yeah, thank you. So we've the request we put in this year was for $1,500, and then we have an additional ask of $1,000 to support our Mountain Town Connector. Has anybody seen the Mountain Town Connector around? It's our new transportation program. It is booming. So we've decided to go to each of our towns and request just an appropriation each year. So we've started with 1,000 from each of our towns, and we serve 9 towns. Londonderry is our biggest town. Does everybody know who Neighborhood Connections are? I'm really here to answer questions. We're a health and social service agency. Our primary services are social services. We do case management. We've got 2 very qualified, very wonderful social workers that are in the office Monday through Friday. And then we have our transportation program that was launched about 1.5 years ago. Free rides wherever you want to go. About 40% of our rides are for medical rides, medical appointments. About 30% of our rides this past year were for food and essential items. Food is mostly getting to a grocery store that is cheaper than Clark's, which is not hard to do. And then education. We have a school partnership program with Floodbrook, so we've been partnering with Floodbrook to provide some transportation where they're struggling for some of the kiddos in after-school programs. And then we have our space available, the meeting place. We have about 14 different groups right now that utilize the meeting place for various things, book clubs. Our Clean and Sober group meets weekly. Our tax program is running right now. We have exercise classes, bone builders, Tai Chi, all kinds of fun stuff to get into. So those are kind of our main services, but any questions you have, I'm happy to,
Yeah, could you give us a history of who is paying for the transportation currently, or what established it, and is that funding going to be continuing, or the town's going to be taking a larger share as time goes by?
Sure, great question. So it is funded currently, we're about a year and a half into a 3-year grant with the Hope Fund. It was a $150,000 grant, really got us off and kicking, which has been fantastic. Right now, we are, we've got about another year and a half to find the sustainable funding. So we have, our plan right now is some part will go to the towns. We'll, make an ask. We're really trying to decide how it gets divvied up based on usage. So Londonderry is the lion's share, obviously. It's the largest town that we serve. So, we're trying to be proportional. We thought $1,000 was good to start with each town. And then once we have another year of data, of ridership, we'll kind of come back and reevaluate and see where we kind of land. We also are renting the van out. We're doing some for-profit driving, which will help, cover some of our expenses. Our expenses are really the van and our drivers. We have 5 part-time drivers right now. We were running off volunteers, and then the volume just exploded, and we said, okay, we kind of were doing 35, 40 requests a month, and then, then it went to 45, and then it went to 60, and then it went to 89, and then in December we had 100 requests for rides, and we went, okay, we need more drivers. So that's kind of where we're at right now. We've got another year and a half, but it'll go out for general fundraising. It's in our operational budget right now, so about 74% of our funds come from the community already. That's our total operating budget for the organization, so you keep us running. Oh, yes, I'm sorry.
Neighborhood Connections is a truly wonderful organization, and I personally have availed myself of some of your services, but I thought it might be helpful for Andover people. Do you have like numbers of Andover residents who have availed themselves of your services?
Off the top of my head, it's funny because I was looking through some of our stats. We're getting better and better. I've been in Neighborhood Connections for 2.5 years. When I came in, everything was on pen and paper, which was terrifying. So we're on computers now, which is very exciting. And we're getting better and better at tracking our services. Our services have doubled since last year. Andover, for the small town that you are, actually make up about 10% of our service deliveries, which I was very surprised at because you're a small town. So you are making up a big part, and you're pretty close to that in rides as well. So about 10% all the way around. The number, what I didn't pull was the number of residents, which I can pull. Getting better and better, kind of tracking age, and that kind of stuff. But I know you make up about 10% of our services.
What's going on with your mobile medical van? Is that still in service?
That is not ours. But that belongs to North Star.
Oh, okay.
So there's a medical van, a medical clinic. It's Dolores, that's why. Most of you probably know Dolores, yeah, Dr. Barbo, and she got 2 vans dedicated to her. One of them is the fancy medical one that belongs to North Star. We work very closely with them, but we don't own it, thankfully, because I wouldn't know to do that. Yes.
You provide the transportation to the Amtrak station in Bellows Falls?
That's a good question. We haven't, yeah, we prioritize medical rides right now, medical and essential needs. But what I always tell people is, because you never know kind of what the context is for, we have given people rides to transportation things because the context was, kind of fit within our mission. So I would say give the office a call and ask. Yeah. Other questions?
I have one question.
Sure.
I think you already answered it, but I wasn't paying attention. This is all figured on excellent organization. I have no problem with that. But, I see in the book that it doubled, but this is, you're saying more and more people are using it. And I know for a fact people that are using it, and that's how you base this request.
Our requests for the towns are actually pretty low. We haven't asked for more money from any of our towns for the last 2 years, and that's honestly because the community's been so generous with COVID. We've just had this enormous, amount of support, and we just felt like we didn't need to, so we didn't. This last year, now we're hitting the fallout, right? So like COVID hit, everybody went, oh, I need help, and we just felt that, and now COVID's kind of, hiding, going away, and, fuel assistance, food stamp benefits, all that extra COVID money is now being taken away. And so now is when we're seeing the fallout now for our clients. And so this is the time when we felt like we need to make sure that we're really getting out to the communities and letting people know that our service has doubled over the last year. Our transportation is really booming. It's the time when we really need that.
I just want to know how you figured it, because if you look at the track record, it went from 750 to 1,500.
Yeah.
I have no problem with that. I
Yeah.
just wanted to know that, and I know for a fact a lot of people are using that. They use the tax services and stuff like that.
Yeah.
It's very helpful for a lot of people.
Yeah, thank you. It's a low number all the way around. We're just, like I said, the last couple of years we hadn't raised it at all, and we felt like when we came into it, we kind of assessed our budget and said, where can we press with the towns, and it depends on, service, but it doesn't always match up one-to-one. Like I said, we're very Londonderry heavy. We have a strong presence in Londonderry, so, and it's a big town, so.
Just keep it going. It's well appreciated.
Thank you so much, and we appreciate so much the support. I mean, I love these meetings, and because it's so great to get out and see everybody and say thank you to you to keep it going.
Do you have any grants in the work? Any possible grants?
We got bundles of grants. Elisa's whole job is to keep that place up operating and make sure everybody gets their paycheck. So. Yes, we are getting better and better at grants, but we still rely heavily on the community. We're there because you guys want us to do it, so we appreciate it. All right, I know you got a lot on the agenda here, and I think I filled the void.
You filled the void.
Yes.
I think you mentioned that you have social workers that work in this program.
We do.
Could you, how many of those are available? And could you give us a rough outline on the services that they offer?
Absolutely, I'll make it super quick. So we have 2 social workers, both of them are licensed right now, which is wonderful. We have one on the new end, her name's Katie. She's just like a kid, 28 years old, but amazing. And she does, and then we have Lois, she's on the other end. She was almost retired, thought she was retired before we threw her back in. A lifetime of social work experience. She's also a licensed mental health counselor, so she can, so we've been able to bring counseling into our office, which is fantastic. So they run the whole gamut. We just say, come in, tell us what you need, we'll see if we can help you, we can figure it out. That's everything, and if we can't, then we have a huge network of partners that we work with. So we work on a referral basis. So if we can't do it, we will find somebody that can come in and help. But examples of that, everything from state benefits, food stamps, fuel assistance. Those applications often can be kind of difficult. Disability applications. Housing applications, any kind of applications, all the way from counseling, we're counseling a lot of kiddos over at Floodbrook, to advocacy for medical bills, to you can't figure out how to turn your jitterbug phone on, to, really the whole gamut, trying to find employment, making, a resume. Really, truly, come in, tell us what your problem is, what you're needing help or assistance with, and we'll see what we can do.
Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, you gotta kick me out.
Wow, that was perfect, because the vote is ready. Thank you, Amy. Go try to read this. Okay. We confer once again, just to make sure now that I have the glasses on. That's great. All right, thank you all for your patience. Thank you, Nikki, for that great and perfectly timed presentation. And if you don't know Neighborhood Connections, you folks have a website. There's always someone on the phone who will answer any questions you have. We're truly fortunate to have them in the community. So the results of the election here, the balloting, there were 62 votes cast, 25 for Jean, and 37 for Melissa. So Melissa is reinstated. Thank you all so much for your time and for being so patient with that. And we will move on to the next item on the agenda. We have Sheriff Brian Palmer here, but since Nikki timed that so well, we don't have any time for you now, but we'll sneak you in later.
That's okay. What are you driving?
He's quick. He's quick. He's done this before.
Just don't ask me to run.
Let's see, let me find my place. All right, so our next floor vote item is a select board member for 1 year remaining of a 3-year term. And this is a position currently held by Susan Leader. Do we have nominations from the floor? Brooke.
I'd like to nominate Susan again for that position.
Brooke has nominated Susan. Is there a second?
I'll second that.
I'll second it.
Paul and Hank have nominated, or have seconded that. Are there other nominations? Joe?
If there are no other nominations, Mr. Moderator, I would move that nominations be closed and that the clerk cast one ballot for Susan Leader as for a 1-year term.
All,
It's a 3-year term, 1 year remaining, please.
one year remaining of a 3-year term.
Right.
Yes. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, nay. Susan is re-elected.
Thank you.
The next item is select board member for a 1-year term, position currently held by Richard Griswold. Are there nominations from the floor?
I nominate Richard Griswold.
Richard Griswold has been nominated. Is there a second? Lucas has seconded. Are there other nominations from the floor?
Mr. Moderator?
Yes.
If there are no further nominations, I move that the clerk cast one ballot for Richard Griswold.
All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, nay. Thank you. I have a question for the Zoom tech folk. Are we totally messing up and not having people speak from the mic, or is it working?
Have to ask someone on Zoom.
Okay. Can we ask our Zoom, maybe this person named Dude? Is it working?
We go with
Thumbs up.
Okay, all right.
Lucky dude probably has to be you.
Our last select board position is the select board member for a 1-year term, position currently held by Robin Trask. So right down here at the end. Are there nominations from the floor? Mr. Trask. I think this is called nepotism.
I nominate Robin Trask.
Her husband has nominated Robin Trask.
Second that.
Paul Stump has seconded. Are there other nominations from the floor?
Mr. Moderator?
Yes,
If there aren't
Jan.
any further nominations, I move that the clerk cast one ballot for Robin Trask.
All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Robin is re-elected. And by the way, thank you again to Jean for being willing to stand, and for you, sir, for nominating him. It's always good to have people who are willing to serve in positions. These are highly paid individuals here. This is a real gold mine of a job here. So it's wonderful to have folks interested in serving in our town. Now we move to the position of auditor for a 3-year term. This is replacing Bob Francis, who apparently is not here. and does not wish to seek re-election. Do we have nominations from the floor? This is the position as auditor, so it's auditing the town budget and books. We don't have Bob here, but I think Jeanette instructs me that if there is not a nomination, never fear, the board will knock on doors and harass someone until they say yes. But once again, is there a nomination? Yes, Brooke.
This is not a nomination, but does the select board appoint someone until the following year? Is
Yes,
that how it works?
that's,
Okay.
yeah, they would. So we will not go without an auditor, but there may not be someone here who has been nominated. Apparently there isn't, so we can move on if that's okay with you as voters. So we move to the position of lister for a 3-year term, and this is the position currently held by Francesca Salazar, who has held that position, I think, since the Eisenhower administration. When she was only 3 years old, so. She would like to continue in that position. Are there nominations from the floor? Yes, Ray.
I nominate Francesca.
Ray has nominated Francesca. Is there a second? Hank has seconded. Are there other nominations? Yes.
Yes, I nominate Jean Garvey.
And remind me of your name. I know you, but
Colleen.
you're Colleen. Colleen last name?
Garvey.
Garvey. So you're nominating?
Yeah, so you want me to come to that?
Sure, yeah, why don't you speak?
Virtually, probably nobody knows me.
Speak into this.
I will. Okay, thank you very much. And hi, neighbors. My wife and I retired to Vermont after spending quite a bit of time down south. Grew up in Pennsylvania, but we retired to Chester in 2019. And there I served as a justice of the peace. So kind of in my blood to, give back, to try to become, a good part, contributing part of a community. So I have a degree in public administration, which I didn't use that much, but it gave me a good familiarity with how all the different levels of government work and how you put together partnerships, etc. And the reason I'm going for the lister position is because it's become, I've been doing a lot of reading on it and taking some of the webinar training, if you will, just reviewing the lister training. So there's a lot involved in it. And I understand there's going to be perhaps a change made, but I thought I would put my hat in the ring. And, I've got a lot to learn, but I have some experience. I was a real estate broker. Oh, can everyone hear me? I was a real estate broker for 12 years in North Carolina, from 2006 to 2018. So when I retired, there was no reciprocity with Vermont. So I let that license lapse. But that was a big part of the job, obviously, is determining fair market value of properties, obviously. Did a lot of that. So I'm familiar with all the different appraisal methods and whatnot. So I think with a bit of training and dedication to it, I think I could serve, quite well in that role. So thank you.
Thank you. So Jean Garvey has been nominated and seconded. Susan, yeah.
I don't mind seconding it, but I wanted to ask a question.
Yeah, no, he's been seconded, so you have a question.
Sure, I'll second.
No, she's saying she's been seconded, so you can have a
I
question.
wanted to ask a question.
Yes.
My understanding is
Can
that...
you all hear Susan?
My understanding is that we need more than one lister. It seems a pity for them to be running for the same position.
We also have to vote.
That is a very good point. Let our town clerk speak to that.
There is only one position on the warning, and that is what we are here to vote on. And each position is 3 years, and as there was only one position put on the warning, that's unfortunately what we can do.
So we can't make that.
Did everyone hear Jeanette's explanation? That Susan's very good question was that in the past, because both the Salazars have served in that position, and that is a function of the fact that they are married. They are also incredibly professional and skilled. So we've kind of gotten a twofer in some ways. Susan's question was, why can't Mr. Garvey simply join Francesca? And Jeanette's answer to that is that because we've only warned the election of one position. Yes, Paul?
Can the select board appoint Mr. Garvey if he does not run against Francesca?
That's a great question. Joe, would you weigh in on that? Did anyone hear Paul's question? It relates to whether the select board can appoint Mr. Garvey, and that way we avoid two people running against each other. Joe?
My understanding is that there are three positions, one of which is vacant at this point, and it hasn't been warned. One has been warned because it is a regular 3-year term, and that's the one that we're going to do an election on. If there is a vacancy on that board, the select board is authorized to do an appointment until the next time an election is scheduled. So it's very easy for Mr. Garvey to be appointed to the board and get familiar with the issues.
So let me ask you, sir, would you, I'm putting you on the spot, but would you be willing to petition the board to be appointed as a second on this position and avoid a election vote?
Yeah, no, absolutely, sure.
Okay, yes, Rob.
I wanted to ask Jeanette if she would speak to the vote that's going on right now in regards to our lister and the lister position, because you all are voting, if you did make a vote, can you speak to it, Jeanette? Your vote.
If he agrees to this, we don't even vote now.
Exactly.
That's correct. And from now on, it would not be, it would be appointed. That's what's on the ballot.
We have a ballot for the lister position to be appointed. Francesca had written that she thought that was a good idea. The select board has spoken back and forth about it, but brought it to you folks as to it being an appointed versus.
Can you add anything to that, Jeanette? Sure. Or is that?
So one of the items on the ballots that you had out in the kitchen today was by statute, towns are allowed to take a position like lister that's currently an elected position and vote and approve to change it to an appointed position. And what that allows for is a broader pool of candidates, qualified candidates to fill a position such as lister. It's getting harder and harder to find folks who are registered voters within the municipality to fill these roles, which is why there's been a seat on the board of listers for some time that has sat empty. So one of the suggestions by Francesca, the remaining lister, is make it an appointed position, and then it will be at the discretion of the select board at their next organizational meeting to appoint a number of qualified people, however many they think that will take to do those same jobs. And by statute, they are under obligation to perform the same duties as our currently elected listers.
Can you go outside the town for appointment?
Yes, when it's an appointed position, that gives the select board the ability to seek qualified individuals outside of Andover, and many towns are currently doing that, and actually some listers are working part-time in 2 and 3 municipalities because they have that experience, and they're able to take it to other towns because it's now appointed.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you.
So I'm going to try to sum it up here and then take more questions. My understanding now is that, Mr. Garvey, if you're willing to have conversation with the select board, that isn't that possible for you to join that body in that position? Would you be willing to do that?
Yes.
Okay. Have I got that, select board? Is that your understanding of where we're at?
And just for clarification, it wouldn't be now because we haven't counted those ballots yet to see if that article has been approved yet.
Okay.
So right now, we are still in a position where we are needing to elect a lister
Yeah.
One
until those ballots
Yeah.
get counted, and then at the next select board meeting, they will be appointing all of the jobs in town that are appointed jobs.
So with your permission, voters, I would make the suggestion to Mr. Garvey that you perhaps withdraw your nomination, your nomination, and we count those ballots. And depending on the result of that, then you jump back in and have conversations with the select board, if that's appropriate.
Mr. Moderator, if there is only one nominee,
Yeah.
we don't need to vote by white paper ballot.
Right. And that nominee would remain then Francesca.
Exactly.
Yeah. So we would do that. Mr. Garvey would stand down for the time being. Thank you for offering and for your words for standing up. Yeah, Linda.
We have two nominees for
Yeah.
this one position.
Yeah.
If Mr. Garvey wins this nomination, then Francesca could be appointed by the board for the year. If Francesca wins this nomination, then Mr. Garvey could be. There would be no reason for him to withdraw his nomination.
That is true. You've made a good point.
It may spare me a show.
Yeah, I guess in all fairness, I guess it's not, I don't know the history as well, but to ask one person just because they were the second nominated doesn't seem as fair as somebody, so that just in all fairness, and taking that aside. But my next question is, if that, just to clarify, if the thing we voted on today passes, this would technically be the last time we would vote for that lister position, is that correct?
Correct.
Okay, so this could be this like grand finale of voting for a lister position and not really meeting up to the end.
This time around, yes.
Yeah, okay.
Back here then, Gene.
Jason Gill, just point of clarification, if it doesn't pass and it stays an elected position, the board still has the right to appoint.
Absolutely.
Correct.
Yes, correct.
Just until the next town vote. No matter how long the term is, it has to be voted on at the next vote.
Once the next election.
Next election.
I mean, generally what we want to do is you've elected the select board to manage the town affairs, and we want to respect their recommendation. And so the quickest and most efficient way to get to that is what we want. This is what we want to do now. I saw another hand.
That was my question.
Okay. So is this all as clear as mud? So basically, I think Linda is 1,000% correct that we could simply go forward with the vote. The issue is, do we want to spend the time doing that? It is a time issue, and it makes. Okay. Okay.
That's the fair way to do it.
Okay.
Both nominated.
Yeah.
It's only fair that they.
Okay. Does anyone? I agree with you. Does anyone have a difference of opinion on that? Okay. Yeah, Hank.
You guys just withdraws, then you don't have to have the paper ballot, and it stays the same.
Yeah.
It just saves the time of having to count ballots.
Well, I think yes, that is true, but I think it is a fair democratic way to do business in the town. He's been nominated, and his point is, let's go through the process.
Yep.
There's not that many people, you know. So.
It's gonna wind up there anyway, so what is that?
Exactly. So Jeanette and Jonathan, thank you once again. So just to clarify the names, it's Jean Garvey. Yes. And Francesca Salazar. You all understand that we win either way. So it's all good. While you are doing that, if I could ask for a relative order in the room, I'm going to. Deb reminds us there are snacks if your blood sugar is crashing, all this stuff.
I would love a cookie, but I
So
couldn't get to that.
we have Sheriff Ryan Palmer here, and if you can do your voting in relative calm and quiet, I'd like to ask him to either stand at the podium or stand out behind. Yeah, and speak to you.
All right, folks, thanks for putting up with me for a few minutes here. Sheriff Ryan Palmer, newly elected in November, took over from a 4-year incumbent. The idea is that we're changing from an organization that's solely focused on traffic citations to congregate to write traffic citations and transition to what I call more of a holistic, modern law enforcement agency that's focused on community problem solving, whether that's speeding on your main road or it's some criminal behavior, social issues, things like that. In the last month, since I've been in office, which was February 1st, we've implemented body cameras. We have new dash cameras that are going in our cruisers. We've done a lot of training. I've hired 7 new people and added that to the organization. We are currently contracted about 4 hours a week with the town of Andover. We're looking to transition from an agency that just does an hourly contract and becoming more of a countywide and regional law enforcement agency, so we can take over calls for service and answer if somebody has a problem, not just the 4 hours that we're in town patrolling, but trying to transition again to where we're filling that void that kind of state police has left with their staffing issues and their kind of cultural shift away from small town policing. We talk about social services. My goal in the next 6 months to a year is to have an in-house social worker that we can respond and deal with a lot of these complaints that are not necessarily criminal in nature that we deal with. So, does anyone have any questions for me? I guess I'm up here. Sir?
So if you're currently operating on a paid hourly basis, and when you transition, how will you be compensated?
Yeah, so our contracts are based off an hourly rate for the year. We will still be compensated kind of in the same way, kind of that minimum floor of this is your how much hours you have from us to patrol in town, but we're taking over kind of.
What you're saying, like if we hire you to do traffic stops, and then there's another mental health crisis or something, and you come in instead of the state police, is that time outside of your 4 hours, or is that?
Yeah, our goal was to transition into that. I think as we look for Andover's budget, we probably are another budget cycle away from really being able to provide that full-time service, but my goal is to start taking, when I have people in this geographical area, to take over calls for service for you. So what we've been seeing in the last couple of years, the state police is really, between staffing and just kind of priorities, they're shifting away from answering calls in small towns, or they're doing it over the phone, or just not doing it at all. So
I understand that, but I don't understand how you're compensated, because you're saying we're only hiring you for 4 hours, but you're going to suddenly take calls that the state police can't respond to. If we've used our 4 hours, do you not respond to Andover anymore for those calls, or do you respond and then bill us, or how does that going to work?
So we will enter into a contract with Andover for the price that's budgeted. I'm working on, I was looking for a little bit more from Andover, but we'll kind of front some of those, the price on that, and kind of investing in the future as we transition to a countywide law enforcement agency. So when I have people in working, the goal is to have people 7 days a week, day shift, night shift, and we will have, Andover is going to be our southern geographical patrol zone, and our folks will respond to calls for service.
Other questions for Sheriff Palmer? Yeah.
How does the training compare to sheriffs versus state police?
We all go to the same academy. So some folks have been through the part-time school. The majority of my folks are full-time certified or level 3 certified. So state police does a couple of weeks of their pre-basic and their post-basic, which is entirely focused on how the state police operate. But we all go through the same police academy. Our in-service training, we're going to be one of the best trained agencies in the state, I think. I mean, I've already sent people I sent 5 home to a drug interdiction school for 8 hours last week. I sent another guy leadership training. So I'm working on bringing interview interrogation, de-escalation, all those things. We'll make sure that our in-service training is top notch. So this is not, the previous administration was about just writing tickets and the bare minimum of training and certifications. And we're moving forward and making it a world-class organization. So.
Would you please explain to everybody here the difference between a sheriff and a policeman? Because you're elected by the people, and like chief of police or something, these are all appointed by politicians, and they answer to them, and this is what's wrong with this country today, is because the politicians defund the police and all that bullshit. You don't have to answer, you answer to the people, not to a politician. Can you explain that to the people?
So the short version is I am an elected police officer that oversees a countywide law enforcement agency in Windsor County. Vermont's kind of unique, the way that we fund our sheriff's departments. We're a quasi-business in the sense that we don't really have a county form of government, where we come to provide a lot of our contractual law enforcement services. Town of Andover, you need law enforcement service. State police is not providing you anything extra, so we would like to come in and be your police. You enter into a contractual obligation with us, opposed to maybe a town, like I'm the chair of the select board in Windsor, we have a police department, costs us about $1 million a year. And we're trying to provide a service that's a little bit more cost effective. You're speaking, I am a constitutional elected official in the state of Vermont, and I don't have anyone over me. I answer to the voters every 4 years, I guess is kind of what you're getting at, as opposed to being an appointed police chief who would answer directly to the select board.
Yeah. People don't understand that, and it's like you explained it to them.
Yeah, absolutely. And Vermont is, the sheriff's is even more convoluted. We can spend all night talking about that.
So nobody's going to come to you and tell you not to enforce this law because they don't like it. You enforce the law.
Well, I mean, lots of people might come to me to say that, but I don't, I answer to you guys every 4 years, is the point.
Yeah, I have a question here, and then
Sure.
I'm Nancy Juergens. I live on Marsh Hill Road. You may have alluded to this, and I didn't pay attention enough. It seems to me that a lot of the things we hear about in the news have a lot of the confrontations between officers and the public often have to do with mental health issues, especially when things go wrong. So I think you may have mentioned, but I missed. What kind of mental health training do your officers have? And are they prepared to handle that kind of disruption when it happens?
Yeah, so we're working on making sure, part of every officer in Vermont has had to go through what's called Team 2 training and deal with people in crisis. Myself, I've been through the FBI Crisis Negotiator School, which is a week-long course to learn how to, essentially when we're talking about people in crisis, right, or even just our families or whatever, you cannot have elevated emotions and rational thought coexisting. So traditionally, we're the police, do what we say. So transitioning to this concept of trying to lower elevated emotions and work on that rational thought. A lot of my folks, one of them's a verbal de-escalation training instructor. They've done a lot of in-house training. I'm working on bringing some folks from out of state that are de-escalation training certified and all those type of things. So yes, mental health scenarios do sometimes go awry, or some of the things that we've seen. But other big ticket items that we've seen in the news that are either lack of training or poor culture, whether it was the George Floyd incident, whether it was this thing that just happened in Memphis, right? Those weren't mental health issues. Those were poor training and poor culture and poor leadership within your department. So we're working very hard to fix those scenarios. right? And making sure that we do have a good culture, that my folks are interacting with the community, they're getting out of their cars, they're not just writing speeding tickets, they're stopping in the local store, the school, the town hall, so that you know your local police. It's not just some guy sitting on the side of the road that may or may not write a ticket, right? So I think that's one of those pieces of that puzzle, knowing your community members, right? Whether it's a domestic, whether it's a mental health crisis, knowing who those people are, how to deal with them. So it's not just about training, it's about culture, and that's what we're working on as well. So your original question was, how much training does each one of your officers have? I don't know that off the top of my head. I know that they've worked a little bit on that. There's mandatory training for the state of Vermont, and we're continuing to work on that as part of my administration.
Your answer was better than just a number, so thank you.
Oh, yes, ma'am.
As a select board member, am I allowed to join in? Okay. I just wanted to say that I was thinking that if I were reelected to be on the select board this year, so thank you, that Andover's relationship with the sheriff's department is going to be a very big issue that needs to be decided. And I think it's very, very important that Andover people, show up at the meetings when it's on the agenda, because it would be a very big change. And also it would be a budget item. So it's going to be very important for the select board to understand whether Andover citizens feel they need or want more policing. And then I thank you for coming to the meeting. It was you're very important that you came today. And I wanted to ask you directly, do you feel that Andover needs more policing?
Oh yeah, because I get paid for it. I personally think that 4 hours is insufficient, and I think if we're being 100% on the up and up here, I'm concerned that it's really tough for us to make it worth our while, because you're the farthest town out of the county, and some patrol zones that there are some areas it takes us over an hour to get here. But as I said in that kind of first meeting, we'll work through that. I think that $30,000 is a number that would make sense, and that bumps your patrol up to around, I think we can get to about 10 hours a week. I think whether it's speeding, or you're worried about people breaking into houses, or you're worried, community problem solving is, I want to know what your goals are, and I think we need to have a more in-depth conversation with that. Do I think that $12,400 a year on police services is sufficient? No, frankly, I think the number around 30 is something that makes more sense, but that's my opinion.
I have a question. When you talk about the 10 hours a week, if there's a contested ticket or whatnot, and you have to go to court for that, is that taken out of those 10 hours a week?
No, that's patrol time for you guys. So.
It's straight patrol time.
Yeah, and most of it in court now is all online, so it's not even.
But I know in the past that's what we have had. We've seen.
No, I'm trying to give you the most bang for your buck. So part of your 10 hours a week at that $30,000 mark is helping pay for a position that's going to work in this geographical patrol zone that the way it shapes out now is probably going to be Reading, Cavendish, and Andover. Just because of the nature of the geography, I'd like to get Weston on board as well, but we're hoping that we'll be able to have well under a half-hour response time. I think if you look at response times from state police, we've seen this across the county where, and I'll share this little story. I know you guys are trying to move forward, but I was called by Bethel this week because they needed someone to go check on a student that had been missing for a week, and rough parents and all this stuff. But state police's answer to that was to call the parent over the phone, and this was a student that had a lot of issues, parents were involved in drug laws. And so calling in and not checking on that kid, and actually calling over the phone, oh yeah, everything's okay. Well, the school's not happy with that. They called us. We don't actually have a contractual obligation with Bethel right now, but myself and one of my deputies went up there, laid eyes on the kids, talked to them, gave a report back to the school. So trying to provide better police service. I'm not, state police has their reasons for the way they're operating, the way they do, but my goal is you will have a car in your town, driving up here down your roads, 10 hours a week at the $30,000 mark, plus we're responding to calls for service.
Sheriff Palmer, thank you so much. And just a word of advice, if you want to continue your political career any further, you have to work to be less honest.
I'm just trying to stay in Windsor County, not Montpelier or Washington.
That was the right answer. Jeanette, are we there yet? Thank you, Jeanette, and Jonathan, and Al, for counting. You have good service back there. And Sheriff Palmer, I hope that you will answer our invitation to attend the meeting.
Is there going to be cookies?
There, you take it. All right, I'll be there then. There's cookies. Now we know it's in place. So thanks again for your patience. It was fortuitous that we had Sheriff Palmer here. That's wonderful. And thank you for your questions. The results of that balloting, paper balloting for this position of lister. There were 60 votes cast, 38 for Fran Salazar and 22 for Mr. Garvey. I'm sorry, I'm so sorry. So, we, as I said, we win either way. But thank you to Linda and to everyone who suggested that we go through the motions. And Mr. Garvey, I encourage you to be in conversation with the select board. Yeah, thank you to the voters. So we are on to, interestingly enough, seeing that we just had our sheriff here, we are in our position for first constable for a one-year term, a position currently held by Lucas Trask. And he's already raised his hand, but let him raise it again. Do we have nominations from the floor? Yes, Nick.
I'm not being egotistical, but you skipped me, John.
Oh, sorry, I did do that, yeah.
Just as a point of order, as the list goes down.
No, you're later, Nick.
Yeah. Oh, on this one, on the town report, I come before.
Oh, yeah, okay.
I apologize, then on my report, on mine.
No, you did bring it to my attention. That's good, thank you.
It comes down the list.
We'll get to you in a minute.
Then for constable.
So Lucas, you hold the position. You currently wish to be reappointed. Do we have other nominations from the floor? Yes.
I saw that coming.
That's it. And this really is nepotism.
I nominate Lucas.
Nick has nominated Lucas. Do we have a second? The other Nick has, Nicholas has seconded. Are there other nominations? This is for our position, our first constable position for a one-year term.
Mr. Moderator.
Jeanette?
If there aren't any further nominations, I move that the clerk cast one ballot for Lucas Trask for first constable.
All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Congratulations. Yes. Next item on the agenda here is collector of delinquent taxes for a one-year term. This is a position currently held by Jeanette Haight. Are there nominations from the floor? Yes, Brooke. Brooke has nominated Jeanette. Is there a second? Mr. Garvey has seconded. Are there other nominations? I'll say it. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. And Cemetery Commissioner for a 3-year term currently held by Nicholas Baker. Are there nominations from the floor? Yeah, Lucas.
I nominate Baker.
Lucas has nominated Nick Baker. Are there other nominations? Or is this a second?
I'll second it.
Burke has seconded. Are there other nominations? If
Mr.
Jeanette?
Moderator, if there there are no further nominations, I move the clerk cast one ballot for Nicholas Baker.
All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Congratulations, Nicholas. And now we're to the last of the floor vote or paper vote issues on the ballot today, or on the agenda today. This is for a sexton for a one-year term, position currently held by Hank Mowdy. Again, a sexton for a position of 1 year, currently held by Hank Mowdy. And Hank, we all know you, but raise your hand again if you would. He's sitting right there. Are there other nominations for sexton?
Mr. Moderator.
Yes, John.
I would nominate Hank Mowdy.
Hank Mowdy has been nominated. Is there a second?
I'll second it.
All right. Jill has seconded. Are there other nominations?
I just asked a question.
Yes.
What's a sext?
Hank, you want to get on your stump here and explain what you do as a sexton?
I'll be the last one to let you down.
That's good.
You know, my job, I like to help people, because that's a sad time in their life when they've lost someone that they love. We're gonna have to change a few of the rules, because everything is, the plot sizes are antiquated, the antiques, they just were made for the old days. And the price of the lots are, we're gonna have to raise those because of the, it's an awful battle to get people to install, I mostly do it, but to buy the cornerstones to mark your lot. By law, I can't give you the deed to your property, because that's yours when you buy a plot in the cemetery. That's your piece of real estate. You have to mark it, because you might buy the lot now and plan for the future, and if I'm gone and there's no record, you know, you have to put these cornerstones to mark your property. And we're trying to, and the price of those are going up, and people don't like to spend the money. If you want a nice square granite, one with a polished top, and your initial on the top of it, we go for about $42 a piece. You have to have 4 of them. And once they're installed, you get your deed to your property. And I've made the mistake of, you know, nice people, and I said, we'll go down there, and, oh yeah, we'll do it. And you never get installed. You know, and now they've got somebody for a little headstone there or whatever, and so that's going to end. It's going to be right by the book, and I think what they do in a private cemetery, they're very expensive. Anybody ever looked into it? We have one private cemetery in town, and my neighbor takes care of that. And their lots are bigger, but they're very expensive. When you buy a lot in a private cemetery, you pay for those stones. You pay for those cornerstones, and you pay to have them installed. And that's when you get your deed to your property. So it's the way that this town runs it. It's dirt cheap. It's very inexpensive. And I got a big salary, 6 digits. It's all zeros. So people fail to put those signs. I got to chase them around, call them 1,000 times, and it says, you know. He says, I'll put them in for you. I don't mind doing that. I'm certainly not going to buy them for you. So I think what we're going to do is get the cemetery commissioners together and rewrite the plot sizes. Because people don't realize if you want to be buried in a casket that has, now by law, has to go in a vault. And that vault is 40 inches wide and 8 feet long. And that's going to be put in there with a machine, and then he has to hang around and put the cover on it after the funeral's over. So that takes up a big lot, you know. And then if you want a really nice headstone, I've had a lot of experience in my short time I've been doing this with people that install these headstones. A lot of them dig down 4 feet and fill it with cement. They put a nice stone on the top and they'll never move. It'll be there forever. How many cemeteries you go in today and you see the tippy stones and so if you want it done right, it costs you, but it's you know, for a lousy 2-foot stone, and then you've got a 6-inch square marker, and they have to have a base underneath that stone that's wider than the stone. It doesn't leave much room. So the law, if you look in the books, the law is supposed to be 4 feet by 10 feet, but 4 feet doesn't cut it. So I've been making it 5 feet, and that's a strain when you put a casket in it, because that you get 40 inches, and that hole has to be square from. Now in Vermont you can get buried at 6 feet, not 8 feet.
And I can attest that Hank is a great sexton.
So,
having done lots of burials with you, Hank, I always respect.
So that, you know, it's time consuming, and it takes up a lot of space, and so to put a machine in the spot, you cannot pick the spot you want to cast. You're going to have to put you someplace where the machine can fit. You know, if you get cremated, you put a little hole.
Hank, with all due respect, there are going to be a couple people who are going to go on the ground in 10 minutes here. Thank you so much.
You do a lot.
Thank you so much. And truly, I've done a lot of burials in Andover. It's great.
You're going to be in there for a long time. We've done a lot of tree work done.
And we're not going to mind.
And thanks to that, the state of Vermont, they had a, right, we're going to get some of our money back we sent up to that dump hole up in Montpelier. But so we're going to get a few bucks back, and we're going to invest it in taking care of some trees in the cemetery. Because
you've been nominated, and by
gravity never sleeps.
by Jill, I think, and seconded by Brooke. I forget who.
Joe and Jill.
Okay. Are there other nominations?
Mr. Moderator.
Jeanette.
There being no further nominations, I move that the clerk cast 1 ballot for Hank Monty for sexton.
All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, nay. Very good. Thank you so much, Hank. Now we're down to, amazingly, item number 3 on your warning. Where does the time go?
You only have 6 left.
That's right. Shall the voters authorize the town treasurer, pursuant to an article listed here in your warning, to collect the current taxes? If you need an explanation, that's fine. This is a pretty simple item. You basically just need a motion from the floor and a second, and I would suggest we do that and then we vote yes. Do we have a motion from the floor?
Mr. Moderator.
Yes, Joe.
I move that we adopt the article as written.
Do we have a second? Al Peters seconds. Any discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, nay. The article carries. Now, in just a second here, we're going to turn to Chris Plum, head select person here in Andover, to explain the budget for the upcoming fiscal year. Do you need any props, Chris, other than this one?
Turn to page number 22. Page number 22.
No, I can see it. Just couldn't see that.
Okay, this is a little fuzzy because we operate on a fiscal year instead of a calendar year. So last year's budget, the 21-22 budget, ended in June of 22. So that was last June. That's last year's budget, so actually a year and a half away. And this year's budget that we're in now started in June of 22 and go to June 30th of 23. And the budget we're going to vote on is for the following year after that, which starts in June 23. It goes to July 1st of 24. So the total income on page 18 is listed there, but it's 908,000. No, total income of $1,250.77. So it came in 21-22. The total expenses in that 21-22 budget are $1,159.59. The budget for that year was $808,000, $689.83. So we're way over the budget, but we had a lot of income that came in from delinquent taxes and such that covered it. So this year's budget, the 22-23 budget, the income was $978,000, and expenses were $978,000. The proposed budget, the first budget we've ever launched it was over $1 million, but $1,066,178. And of that income, $919 will be raised from municipal taxes. And again, this increase is due overall to increase in overall expenses, particularly emergency services, highway materials, and the cost of fuel. It's just huge. It drove everything up. Cost of culverts, I think Charlie said it goes up about not quite 3 times. Plastics and stuff like that. But I did a little bit of math, and the last time inflation ran away like it did this year, it was I think 1972 when the budget went up like 40% in that year. And we raised up the budget 8% over roughly. So we tried to keep it down. Anybody have questions on the budget?
Questions for Chris and the select board? What was fuel at the beginning of the year and what is it now, Chris?
That
would be Jeanette.
Jeanette? Just roughly, can you just give us we're not going to hold you to it.
We were probably paying $3.60 to $3.75 a gallon, and we've gone as high as $4.30 a gallon for the diesel fuel that's used for the trucks. It has gone back down recently. When the cold weather hits, we get hit with an unexpected expense of having to put kerosene in that fuel, and kerosene is selling for $6.20 a gallon.
Yeah.
So we had to have a bunch of that recently. I will say the oil company, we work with Marcel Oil Company, and they have been great about holding their costs as much as they could. They fill all the heat tanks at all 3 buildings, and I mean, their prices always seem to be better than what I see out in the world. So they've been really good to us.
Did everyone hear Jeanette? This is specifically on the cost of fuel. I imagine road materials were mostly talking about salt and sand in the winter.
Just a little bit back to the fuel, that's how much it's gone up, because as of February 27th, the fuel and oil for the garage and equipment has already reached the budget of $35,000.
Say that again into the.
$35,000 was budgeted, and as of February 27th, it was $35,000.
Okay.
So for the rest of the fiscal year, it will be over budget.
So we're currently over budget.
On that line item, correct?
On that item for fuel, the cost of fuel. Other questions? Yeah, Ray.
You want me to stand? Or?
Sure.
All right.
You want the mic?
Sure. My name is Raymond Mackel. I bought property in Andover in 2001. Started building a house in 2002 and moved in, and I've been here since 2003. I've been a justice of the peace, I think, for 10 years, approximately. So, and I probably will die here and will require Hank services. Not too soon, I hope. My history is when I came here and started building a house, I went to get the homeowner's insurance, fire insurance, and it was extraordinarily expensive. And it was extraordinarily expensive, it was explained to me, was because the insurance industry determines risk based upon the distance to your primary firehouse. Our primary firehouse is in Chester. It is so far away from many properties in this town that we are in the same risk category as having no firehouse at all. I think we need a firehouse in this town. Talk about a long-term plan. If you look at our budget, we were paying $30,000 a year to Chester for ambulance and fire service. That is now up to almost $76,000 a year. We went through this about a year and a half ago, where Chester built their new facility down there. It was bonded for about $5.5 million. It came in at over $8 million. And Chester suddenly decided that we needed to pay our fair share. We are paying, this represents the $76,000, represents about 7% of our budget. 7% of our taxes are going to Chester. We have, as far as I know, very little say as to how that money is spent and how it is, and how much of it and how Andover is actually served. About 10 years ago, I served on a two-person investigatory board with a native, Bonnie Cepetto, who has since moved away. And we looked at fire protection in town and what alternatives might be. We found two things. One is that, this was reinforced a year and a half ago, is that other fire departments will not compete with existing contracts. It's I don't know if it's a gentleman's agreement or what it is, but we have no options in terms of contracting with someone else. Now, someone would say, we're too small to have a fire department. Well, in Wyndham, they have a fire department. They have under 400 residents. They have a fire department. We have about 450 residents. I'm not saying that I have all the answers, but by having a fire department or fire equipment in town under some arrangement, our insurance rates will be lower, and our fire protection will be better, and we will have control over how that money is spent, rather than just sending it out of town, where public officials in another town decide how money is spent or not spent in our behalf. Thank you.
Thanks, Ray. Other comments? Obviously, this is somewhat in the other business portion of the meeting. We have an article on the floor, which is discussion of town budget. It's something we motion for that, but Ray's point obviously relates to our town budget, what we do value and how we fund it, so it is germane. I also just point you, the voters and taxpayers, to the fact that the last item on the agenda is other business, which could according to the warning, could include a discussion of zoning regulations, which would sort of relate tangentially to what Ray is saying. Do you have other comments or questions for Chris or the board pertaining to the budget? Yeah, Linda.
Well, I just want to,
Wait, hey, first Linda and then you. First Linda and then you.
I just wanted to know if anybody had any idea of what this increase in the budget, how that's going to be reflected in our tax rate.
So the question from
I
Linda
know it's
is,
early, I know that.
how is the increase in the budget going to be reflected in our assessed taxes?
Well, it's, as you might know, it's difficult to say because the grand list doesn't get set until May. I just, with the numbers where they are, I would anticipate 5 to 6 cent per 100 tax rate on municipal taxes. Obviously, the town of Andover doesn't set education tax rates, that's done by the state. I just like to remind everybody of that. So that's what we're thinking at this point. And because last year was the first year where we didn't have a surplus to speak of, and many other years we have, that we have applied to the taxes, we also are looking at that reduction, so we really are having to raise more municipal taxes than we have had to in the past.
We also still have a tax stabilization fund, correct? Have
That's
we
correct.
ever used any of that money to help offset budget increases?
Not to my knowledge.
Did everybody hear that? So Linda's comment is that we have a tax stabilization fund. And the question was, have we ever applied that to adjust taxes? And Jeanette's answer was that
Not to my
we
knowledge.
have not.
Not since I've been in the office.
I don't recall, before you, I don't recall ever using any of that money either.
For a point of history here, Linda Bartry is a past clerk, Andover Town clerk, so she knows what she's talking about. Hank, you had a question?
well, I just wanted people to know, well, the $20,000 increase for the fire and ambulance in 1 year. Okay? And if you look in the book, you can find this. They had 51 visits. They had 22 with the fire department and 29 with the ambulance. That's 51 visits last year. And now they want $75,600. That's $1,400, almost $1,500 a visit. And people don't realize, if somebody has a fender bender in town, they send a fire engine. And this, it might be just hit guardrails or something. They send a fire engine. That's $1,500.
Yeah, Paul.
Just follow up on Linda's comment about this tax stabilization fund on page 23. It's $54,000. How would that fund be applied to the future budget?
Paul's question is how 54,000 in the tax stabilization, how would that be applied hypothetically if it were applied? Do you want to address that, Jeanette?
Sure. Do you want me to?
Sure, right.
Okay. So that fund, as all the other town funds, or most of them, are at the discretion of the select board, so certainly it would be something the select board could discuss. The way it would be applied in terms of accounting systems is the tax stabilization fund is a standalone bank account that earns interest every month. So an amount of that money, doesn't have to be all of it, could be all of it, would be moved into the general fund and would be added as a line item of income into the budget.
Thank you.
And while we're standing close, would you remind the voters how items on the warning how the warning is developed? Because there is a process for getting issues on the warning. Your select board, your duly elected select board, obviously works at their discretion to manage town affairs in the budget, but there's also a parallel but related way that you voters can address the the warning, the agenda for the town meeting.
So voters, if you want anything on the town warning, you can certainly submit a petition to the select board ahead of time. If the question is more specific about the budget is an item and it has been warned, and because it's a floor vote whether to approve the budget as written, I would suggest that if someone wanted to make a change, that can be made from the floor because it's approved or not from the floor as well. Does that make sense?
Yeah, Jeff.
Yeah, the tax stabilization fund was developed mainly for a catastrophe or something really drastic in town. And the idea is to keep adding to that and getting that money up so it would be of some significance. $50,000 if we just throw that on our budget really isn't going to help our tax rate a whole lot.
Did everybody hear Jeff's answer? Yes, Susan.
I've only been on this select board and learning things for less than a year, but my understanding is that we are under a state mandated reappraisal order, and I think it's important for the townspeople to know that your select board has labored long and hard to come up with the way to meet that requirement in the most cost-effective way. Tell me if I'm, and there are a lot of unknowns. It's happening all over the state. There aren't enough reappraisers, so it's going to be a process. And taxes are changing because of state mandates also.
Did everyone hear Susan? And are there any follow-ups to that? This relates to obviously how we raise the money for the budget, which is not entirely in our control, but somewhat in our control. Other questions, comments? We do require at some point a motion from the floor to accept or to approve the budget.
Mr. Moderator,
yes.
Are we on item 5?
Oh, I'm sorry. We are on, at that point, yes, thank you, Joe. We would be on item 5. We are still actually on item 4.
Okay.
Yeah.
So we're still discussing the explanation of the budget.
Yeah, this is chewing on the explanation, in fact, but we're moving towards item 5. Any other questions related to the budget for Chris or Ori? So let's move to, thank you, Joe, let's move to item number 5. Shall the voters authorize total fund expenditures for operating expenses of the number that you have there in your, on your warning? And shall this amount be raised by taxes, and then this number be raised by non-tax revenues? Does anyone want to read that so that you get all the numbers on my eyes? Or
Mr. Moderator.
Yes, Joe. Here, I'm going to give you.
I will make a motion to adopt item 5. And the question is, shall the voters authorize the total fund expenditures for operating expenses of $1,666,178, of which $919,178 shall be raised by taxes and $147,000 by non-tax revenues. That's my motion.
Thank you, Joe. Motion has been made by Joe and seconded by Linda. Any discussion? All those in favor of adopting Joe's motion signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, nay. The motion carries. Item number 7 on your warning, shall the town, now we're sort of getting away from fiscal issues for a moment, shall the town change the date of its annual town meeting in 2024?
Number 6.
No,
Number 6.
You're right. I just said very well.
So we don't have to pay taxes.
We're not, yeah, no taxes. Christmas came early.
Sorry.
Shall the voters authorize, this is Article 6, shall the voters authorize payment of real and personal property taxes in 3 installments with the due dates being August 15th, November 1st, and March 1st by delivery to the town office, postmarked on before that date. We seek a motion and a second from the floor.
I'll make a motion.
Brooke has made a motion.
Number 6.
And Linda has seconded for the adoption of motion of Article number 6. Discussion. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. The motion carries. Now we can go to Article number 7. Shall the town change the date of its annual town meeting in 2024 to the Saturday preceding the first Tuesday in March, pursuant to the following Vermont statutes? So shall the town change the date of its annual town meeting in the upcoming year to the Saturday preceding the first Tuesday in March?
Mr. Moderator,
Yes. Yeah.
I would move adoption of the article with the addition that the specific date would be March 2nd, 2024.
Joe has made a motion that the particular date be March 2nd. Do we have a second to that motion?
Second.
All seconded. Any discussion? Yeah, Ray.
Today, or this year, we had to have a contingency day. I contacted Jeanette, and she said she needed prior authorization. It seemed to be pretty obvious we needed to postpone it from Saturday to today. Would we want to set up a backup date in the event of adverse weather or other issues?
That's a good question. I would defer to the select board. I think they made a very, in my view, correct and necessary call. Robin, you want to speak on that? Or Richard?
I can
I think, or go ahead.
we actually had to come here on Saturday and we started
Legally,
the
we have
meeting and we had to recess it until this time.
So
we can only have one date
Right.
and time. So the select board and Jeanette came on Saturday and we started the meeting and we put it into recess until 4 p.m. tonight.
It's a state mandate.
Yeah.
I just wanted to point out that the clarification that Ray was saying that I was seeking was from the Secretary of State's
Right.
office as to how to legally make sure that we were doing that the correct way. And that's what we were informed. That's what we needed to do.
Well, by state statute, you need to convene the meeting as called, but you can adjourn it
Right.
for until a second, a specific
And that's what we
alternate
did.
That's what we
date.
did.
That's a requirement of state law.
Right.
So you acted correctly. And I think, I've been around here for 45 years, and I don't think we've ever had a Saturday or a time when we had to postpone a meeting. So I don't think that's a concern.
So there's been a motion, Joe, there's been a motion made and seconded. I would just point out, as your moderator and as a citizen of the town, the obvious, which is that we have great attendance tonight. I think that technically we have to vote on the article up or down. It is a question, it raises that old familiar question. What's the best time for town meeting? And this certainly seems like a good time. Right now, obviously some of that is we're post-COVID. People are happy and willing to come out. It's a nice night. The select board made the correct call along with Councilman Jeanette. That's a factor. But it certainly is great to see everybody out tonight.
Are we in discussion mode about this still?
Sure.
Yeah. So I also like this time, and so Joe and I were talking about this before. I think the date is set by vote, but the time of day is set by the select board. Is that correct?
Yes.
Joe, is that right?
Yes, it is, because the time is not mentioned in the article.
Okay. Well, that would then be telling the select board that you wish them, if we would vote the article up or down, and if the article passed, then you would be suggesting or requesting of them that they set the time in the evening. I suppose the process for that would be a petition. What would the process be, Jan, to get the time set?
You could do a petition, or simply people can contact the select board and let them know their wishes on the subject.
Yeah, Paul.
Could we do a show of hands for a daytime versus evening meeting?
Yeah, absolutely.
today?
That's a great idea.
Paul has suggested we do a show of hands, I don't need to ask you to vote on that.
It really depends whether that's a Saturday
Sure.
or a weekday, because 4 on Saturday is probably very.
Right. So, let's walk through this here. Nick, did you have a comment?
I've never enjoyed the Saturday town meeting, and I just want everybody to understand that we can vote no.
Yes.
You absolutely have that right to vote no. We can go back to the way it should be. There are way too many other things to do on a Saturday. But a Monday night, as we did for many, many years, worked very well. We always had a really good attendance.
Well, so given that, and given your comment or question, this was Paul's suggestion, would you like to have just an expression of preference by show of hands, which would give a sense of what you, the avid voters, would like? And then to Nick's point, you can absolutely vote the articles down, which doesn't mean we won't have a town meeting, it just means that it's back in the select board's court, and they have to figure out what it would be.
No, then someone from the floor could nominate another day. That's how we got the
Yes.
Saturday. Somebody from the floor nominated that we do it on a Saturday. So we can vote this article no. Someone can nominate, can suggest that we do it on Monday. We can go through, do it on Monday, show of hands Monday.
Paul, does that get you to where you were trying to get to with getting the sense of the meeting? Just have a vote, or would you still like a show of hands?
I'm not sure.
Well, why don't we just have a show of hands? So, the two options that I'm hearing would be this time of night, after 4, early in the week, Monday or Tuesday. Nick is correct, for years and years and years, we had it on Monday, but other towns do it on Tuesday evening. So either this time of night on a weekday or Saturday morning. So first, let's have a show of hands for how many people like this time of night.
During the week.
During the week, yeah. A weekday after 4 o'clock. Show of hands. Keep your hands up.
We'll do better lighting.
All right. We're not doing an exact count, but we have a sense. All right, thank you. Put your hands down. How many people would prefer a Saturday, and we're going to say Saturday morning meeting? Hands up. Okay. It's fairly clear. So, to your point, Mr. Baker, we can express ourselves through our votes.
John,
yeah, Jill.
I'd like to specify Monday rather than Tuesday, because we've got to have a meeting before we vote.
Yes.
I can just add that we were unable to have the meeting yesterday when we had our emergency select board meeting because we would not have had the technical support here because they had 4 other meetings.
Right.
And to have it on Tuesday with the paper votes, 4 p.m. was still squeezed because we have to have that stuff to Chester by 7 for the school budget.
Right.
So if it was on Monday, it could be at 4, but if it was on Tuesday, it would probably have to be earlier than even 4.
So going forward, it could be at 4 on Monday.
As far as
in order to get technical support.
as long as it's planned,
Okay.
because ours was postponed.
One comment.
Yeah.
People, if you have it Monday, you don't have a cushion. If you get, suppose people well, been here for a few years, remember 1991? No, 2000, it was 2001. First day of March, we had a 30-inch snowstorm. And on the last day of March, we had another 30-inch snowstorm. You know how long it takes to recover from a storm like that? So at least if you have it on Saturday, you get a day, just like this year, a cushion, so that you can still have the meeting and vote, you know, legally, you know, when you're supposed to. And you're just going to paint yourself into a corner. And now you get people in the rotten time of year, traveling after dark. And not that it makes any difference to me, I can throw a stone at my house, but somebody that's down in Wayne Hollow is gonna have a problem. So that is, it's still up to the selectmen, and it's still, you can't go by this vote, because the multitude of the people in this town will get to vote on it. And it wasn't advertised.
Well, I think that's a good point about the day and giving ourselves leave. I believe that the statute is that since the legislature has said floor votes carry, help me out here, Joe, Jeanette, that actually, unfortunately, for our non-absent in-person folks, like the folks on Zoom, they have to get here to vote. So it does carry that the night's vote would count.
It's advertised, this is the date that it was advertised.
We can vote it down. But we can vote it down.
So people that knew this, if they wanted to change it, might have come.
Well, yeah, Nick.
Just as a point of order, when we changed,
Yeah.
it was announced in our town report that, to make it the Monday following, however it was worded, the first Monday prior to the first Tuesday of March. That was the warning, and someone again from the floor made the suggestion we should do it on Saturday. And the people that were in this hall voted that in. And we didn't know, it wasn't warned or anything else, there wasn't anything sent out. It was immediate that day. And we would just be duplicating what we did I don't know how long ago it was we changed.
I haven't counted, but some of you, Reno and Chris and others who've been around a long time, I think this is the most, Patty, the most people we've had in town meeting for a decade, maybe?
Yeah.
I thought it was when I started to become the moderator, people started staying away, every person. But now I'm not going to go with that explanation. Yeah, Rob?
Well, I just think because of the show of hands that I would encourage you to vote it down, because it seems like all of you want to have it at a different date, and why not do that?
Certainly there were a few.
Mr. Moderator?
Yes.
If I may.
Yeah.
I made the motion to adopt the article.
Okay.
I wish to withdraw the motion so that an alternate motion could be offered, because if someone wants to make a motion instead of adopting this article, adopting a warrant meeting for a Monday evening or Monday afternoon in 2024, I'm perfectly willing to listen to that.
But don't we have to vote this up or down first?
Well, if I withdraw the motion, you don't have a motion.
Even though it's written in the warning?
You still have an article in the warning.
You have to vote the article up or
You still have a
down.
motion to act on it.
Okay.
Okay?
Everyone understand that Joe is withdrawing his motion? So I would entertain another motion. And the suggestion here would be that would be from someone who wants that alternate time, date and time. So yes, Brooke.
I'm going to tip this. So I'm going to make a motion that the town change the date of its annual town meeting in 2024 to the Monday preceding the first Tuesday in March, pursuant 17 VSA blah blah 264B. I don't have to say the time, just the Monday preceding. Okay, that's all.
Brooke has made a motion. Do we have a second? Second. Ray seconds. Any discussion?
That's March 4th.
That would be March 4th.
Yes.
Further discussion? Are you comfortable with a voice vote? Okay.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, Hank.
If you want to do this, it's not printed in the book that you're going to change it. If you want to change it, print it in the book next year.
No, wait, Hank. The articles are amenable to adjustment at the meeting. The voters have the total power to change whatever article is warned to say something else. We can vote to reduce the budget by $200,000.
Well,
We
then
can do
why
that.
didn't you do that?
You're too late. You're too late. You know, those are the articles those are the businesses that the select board have to ask the voters for a decision about. So we have a total power to change whatever it is they say. And the article says, shall we have it on Saturday? And the voters have said no. We are changing the article to say it's Monday preceding first Tuesday. That's the motion.
Other comments, questions? This is kind of interesting. This is democracy in action. So the motion has been made by Brooke and seconded by Ray. All those in favor of the, you want to restate your motion again, or are you comfortable, voters, with? Yeah.
The select board, so if you want to do that, the time the meeting is could be picked by the select board.
Yeah.
Because you have to consider somebody that has to work for a living. So a lot of the towns do it during the week, and they do it later in the day, so that somebody can come home from work and maybe get a sandwich or something, and then come down and get down to fight about his taxes.
Good point. I would suggest that we're honing in on the date and express your feelings and recommendations to the select board as to specific time. And that's their job, is to listen and try to find a time that's not going to work for everybody. It's not going to be perfect, but again, the fact that there's so many of you here tonight suggests that this works pretty dang well. So Brooke has made a motion, it's been seconded by Ray. Further discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, nay. All right, the motion carries. Thank you so much. Article number 8. I'm going to read this, but I'm thinking that we've sort of started to nibble over this. This is Article number 8. Discuss changing the position of lister from an elected to an appointed position pursuant to an article from the state of Vermont to be voted on by Australian ballot on Tuesday, March 7th, which we've already done.
So we don't have to discuss that. We don't.
Do we have any questions about that? I'm a little fuzzy on that as well. Yeah, Melissa.
I would say that actually having discussion of it is sort of, I mean, everyone's already voted on it.
Yeah.
Right, so do we really need to discuss something that has kind of already been decided?
It's a moot point.
Right, it's a moot point. So maybe we can just.
You have already asked.
Right.
By Australian ballot to make it.
Right.
The only thing the article would do is make an explanation about why you felt that was an article you wanted to ask, if there is a question.
Jeff, do we need, the voters need to affirm that with a vote?
No.
Okay. It's too late. Well, I just thought for old time's sake. So thank you all for your patience. We're now down to article number 9, to discuss any other non-binding business proper to be done at said meeting, including proposed revision of zoning regulations. It's like putting the hot ticket last. Yes, bro.
I've been dominating a lot, but I'm hungry, and it makes me think that if we do this next year, maybe we do a potluck, incorporate it. Just throwing it out there as a suggestion.
Brooke has nominated a potluck. I don't think anybody's going to say no.
I second that potluck.
Second that. I want to speak to you very briefly, and I will keep it brief, not in my capacity as moderator of the meeting, but as a citizen and taxpayer. To let you know that a few months ago, I approached the select board, got their general blessing and approval to convene a small group of ad hoc folks to start trying to look at our housing situation in Andover. What do I mean by that? Well, it's hard to say what I mean because we haven't started to really dig into it as a group yet. Obviously, you all know that attainable housing for folks who are regular income working Vermonters is becoming as scarce as hen's teeth in this region, in this town, in the region in general, and in the whole sort of New England region and elsewhere in the country. This little group does not have any particular power. It's simply going to be breaking up the question into some constituent parts, doing some research, talking to experts, polling you, the voters and residents of Andover, trying to get anecdotal stories from folks about, particularly the concerning issue is folks who, and this comes from state and national housing experts, the concerning number is 30%. If you're spending over 30% of your annual income on your housing, you're considered a cost-burdened individual. You're in a cost-burdened relationship with your housing. And that's very bad for economies, it's very bad for tax bases, for budgets. It's a real disaster, and we are in that position in Vermont. Some estimates suggest that as many as 90,000 Vermont homes are in a cost-burdened relationship with their housing. So we all know somebody, a young person, a middle-aged person, an elder person of varying ability, who is having trouble finding a way to live in the region in which they were born, in which their families came up, or simply a place where they have chosen to live as a free American citizen. So everybody has those stories. I think, looking around this room, I know a lot of you pretty well, and I know that this is a situation that we face as a community. So this little group of individuals is going to get together and try to develop some idea of how we in Andover are affected by this lack of attainable housing. And then we're going to basically make a set of very simple recommendations to the select board. And I don't know what those are going to be, but they're probably going to be, asking the select board to sort of empower in some way a more official and sort of officially constituted group going forward that would hold the question of housing and accessibility to housing for the town of Andover. We're not talking about just subsidized housing. You understand that there's a big difference between housing for people who qualify for a housing subsidy and housing that working people and people who make, $40, $50, $60, $70, $80,000 a year can attain. And we're, I'm not sure where Sheriff Palmer lives. I think he said Windsor. I know a number of folks in Ludlow who report that Ludlow is trying to hire a new cop and a new, maybe nurse for the health center. And at the salaries offered, those people cannot live in the town of Ludlow. So just wanted you to know that's happening. I'm not speaking to you as the moderator. You don't have to do anything about it. If you have questions, that's great. I'll be happily answer any questions afterwards. Yeah, Paul.
John, relating to that, I believe the legislature is currently discussing possibly the state getting involved in town zoning for changing zoning regulations, mandating the state. In other words, we have a 300-foot frontage in Andover for a single-family home. If this type of legislation goes through, the state could say, in Andover, you are required to offer that 300-foot frontage for a duplex. And Andover will have no say about that. It'll be a state mandate. So check in with the legislature and what they're discussing it right now.
It could also change our required 2-acre zoning.
Correct.
They could change a lot of things.
And Joe, you are on the planning commission. You are also chair of the zoning board. Are there other members of the zoning board here? Nick and Gary, Joe, Oh, yes.
Schuman is on Zoom as well.
Yes, oh, yes, Mr. Zalber, yeah. So Paul is absolutely right. This is going to come to a point, it's going to come to a head for us, and most immediately in terms of zoning. And decisions were made in the 70s and the 60s and earlier than that made a lot of sense and may not entirely make sense now. Jeanette.
Mr. Moderator, Representative Kelly Piola is on Zoom, and I know this is one of the issues she has discussed with other constituents, and I don't know if this would be an appropriate.
That would be wonderful. So is it okay with Lonnie if we recognize Representative Hi Kelly, you're on. Let me know, folks in the room, if you need a mic, Kelly.
Can everybody hear me?
Yes.
Great.
Yes, we can.
Great. Thank you for letting me speak. It was great to sit and listen to your meeting. It's the 4th town meeting I've attended today. Just so you all know, I had emailed a brief update to the select board and to Jeanette at the beginning of the meeting. So that is available. And one of the things in that was on what's happening with the omnibus housing bill. And you're right that one of the things that is in that is that the state would be saying that in certain zoning districts, in particular downtowns and some specified development districts, that if you allow for single family dwellings, the state would mandate that would automatically mean that you would need to allow multi-unit development as well. There is a chance that could get removed from the omnibus housing bill. The Senate Natural Resources Committee is looking at that piece of it, and there is some concern that will be removed, or not concern, but conversation about that being removed. Some of the other pieces of that bill are decreasing the jurisdiction of Act 250 around housing, again, in particularly downtowns and town centers and development areas. But that would only be the case in places that have permanent zoning and subdivision bylaws. So that wouldn't apply to everyone statewide. There was another thing that you had just talked about that I wanted to make sure that I mentioned. There's also a requirement about not being able to require more than one parking space per dwelling, which I think is geared towards development in dense areas and not wanting to take up a lot of square footage with parking. Strikes me as being a little bit problematic, given that all of us seem to need to drive to get to our source of employment. And if you have a household with more than one adult, it is likely that you will have more than one vehicle. But at the moment, I haven't heard that that's something that's likely to be removed. It would also change the ability of voters in a town to appeal zoning decisions. Right now, 10 voters in a town can appeal together to remove or to appeal a zoning decision, and they would be removing that ability, which, for better or for worse, there would still be rights of appeal, but it wouldn't be quite as easy to do that. It also addresses the municipal energy code and essentially says if you have an energy code in your zoning bylaws, it can't be any more restrictive than what the state energy codes are. What else is in there?
Kelly, I've got a couple of questions if you...
Sure, I can't see hands, so John, if you are willing to navigate that for me, that's great.
I have a question, I'll leave it off, and then I'll be looking for hands here. It's a little bit tricky. So Kelly, there, as a bill going up for discussion, is there a public comment period? Can you let us know, or where do we find out what that comment period is, when it starts?
I don't know if there's going to be another hearing on this in the Senate. Right now, the omnibus housing bill is in the Senate, and it is at the moment in Senate Natural Resources. So if anyone wants to submit public comment to the committee that is currently taking testimony, it would be to the Senate Natural Resources Committee. Presumably that bill will get voted out of the Senate within the first week that we're back from town meeting break. And then it would be coming to the House. I imagine it will probably visit a few committees in the House. And I can let you know where it's landing. I couldn't tell you where it's going to go first, but by all means, submit testimony to any committee that is looking at the bill. In particular, if you have concerns about how the state is going to be mandating changes to local zoning. I have some concerns about that. So having worked in municipal government for a long time, no town is one size fits all. And for one community, having a lot of dense development in their downtown, and I'll use Londonderry as an example, may not be the best choice given that both of our villages are in the floodplain. You might not want to be building a lot of affordable housing in an area that floods regularly. So that's my brief take on that. Were there other questions?
Yeah, I'm going to just remind everybody, Kelly, that we are past the 6 o'clock hour. I see people are already starting to make their way.
Hungry?
So
Yeah.
what is a couple of brief, maybe 2 very brief questions, and then we'll let you go. Thank you so much for being here and for your service.
Thank you for having me. And I'll try to be there in person next week. I had intended to be there in person on Saturday.
I want to know what your feelings are on the 70 cents a gallon tax on fuel oil. How did you vote on that?
So that bill is also in the Senate. It hasn't been voted on in the House yet. So that's the Affordable Heat Act that you're referring to. I expect that will get voted out of the Senate in the week that we're back as well. So I haven't had the opportunity to vote on it yet.
Your feelings on how are you going to vote on it when it gets to you?
Well, we'll have to see how the House changes it from what is happening in the Senate. If I was asked to vote on it today in its current form, I would have to say I have some concerns about the fact that all of the authority is being given to the Public Utility Commission on that, and the legislature would not be given another opportunity to vote on the policy that the PUC would create and any money that would be associated with that policy, nor would a governor have the ability to veto that policy. So I would say for legal process reasons, I don't like where the bill stands right now.
So you're not going to give an answer one way or the other. You're not going to answer the question. I have another question for you.
Wait, let's see.
I got one more question.
All right, keep it great.
Now in the state of Vermont, from what I understand, on your birth certificate, you can put X.
That's true.
Yes, it is true.
Right. So I'm sorry, what's your question?
I says, how'd you vote on that?
I voted to allow that.
You're going to defy God's will by saying you can put on your birth certificate, you're not a male, you're a female, you're an X? And you represent us? That's disgusting.
Well, now you're editorializing. Do we have other questions from the floor? Yes, maybe one from Susan, and then we will move towards adjournment. Kelly, thank you for being here.
Kelly, I've been following the school choice and the independent school thing, And I think that you must be in a very challenging position, representing Andover as well as Winhall, say, Weston, Londonderry. And I was wondering if you could share some of the challenges of how you are navigating that.
Well, I also support public schools, so I don't see that as a challenge. In fact, the Taconican Green School District is all public schools at the elementary and middle school level. So I don't feel that that's a conflict for me. I also support school choice and independent schools because that is how Winhall is served in its entirety, and it's how high school students in Londonderry and Weston are served. Did you have questions specifically about the policy that's being talked about, or?
It's a kind of a long discussion, but I think in terms of addressing, there's a lot of questions in terms of addressing educational opportunities and equity across the whole state in different districts. And I know that there's a lot of lobbying. Well,
Indeed.
yeah, I'm sure that you're lobbied all the time by many of your constituents, and I don't know that Andover has had that much of a discussion about it, but
I have had one person from Andover ask me to talk about if there is an opportunity for Andover to be able to participate in school choice, but other than that, I've not had any specific communication from anyone in Andover about choice in independent schools. But I'm happy to set up a meeting to talk about that at another date and time.
Thank you.
Thanks, Kelly. I know this is a challenging way to join us. So thanks for being patient, and best of luck. Join us again. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Before I ask for a motion to adjourn, I just want to do some last gratitude business here. I want to acknowledge a number of people. Please hold your applause and allow for one round at the end. First of all, to everyone who serves the town of Andover in these, as Hank so succinctly put it, these highly paid positions as total volunteers, all the way up and down the line, a huge debt to each of you. Hold your applause. To the folks here on the table who have been your able representatives, have chewed on these issues so well and so diligently, a huge debt of gratitude. I want to, especially in terms of our town employees, I want to just give a huge shout out to our extremely able town clerk and assistant town clerk who continue to just be amazing public servants. I know lots of town clerks in the area, so I've played with the idea of like nominating my favorite town clerk anywhere, and that would be unfair, but my favorite town clerk and assistant town clerks in Andover are Jeanette and Jonathan. And then finally, this has been a challenging winter on the roads of Andover, so we would be remiss if we did not remember and thank Charlie, Daryl, and Josh. You've been doing a great job under difficult circumstances. Very often a lot of sand has gotten spread, so thank you for keeping the trains running on time. Just a round of applause for everybody.
To add to that, the many years that Leo Salazar served as listener.
Yes. Yeah, let's give a special round. Thanks, everybody. This has been a very good meeting. Now, George.
I thought we're supposed to be talking about short-term rentals.
There's
an article.
Well, it's other business, and it's the question of zoning changes.
It says zoning changes, including short-term rentals.
Well, my sincere question to you is, do you think we're going to do our best work now at 6:15?
I think it needs to be addressed.
Okay, well, would you have a question or a comment?
No, I am very familiar with this because I'm on the zoning board. And it was kicked back to the select board.
Yeah.
And they were called for a discussion tonight.
So George has made the suggestion that we discuss short-term rentals. Does anyone have any comments, questions on that, Kathy?
I have no problem with that. They solved the problem. And I always said the only control they have over this is the septic system and the house is designed for so many people. But I have one little question about the fee they're gonna charge. Is it gonna be a flat rate or is it gonna be determined by the size of the rental?
I think, who is the best person to answer that question? Is that you, Joe?
Yeah.
Probably that's you, Joe.
I have to admit that I and my crew of 8 people on the Planning Commission and the Zoning Board of Adjustment were asked by the Select Board to assess the issue of short-term rentals and to suggest language that they might adopt to regulate it. We have done that.
Yeah.
And we submitted it to the Select Board for its decision. In it, there were a lot of things that were actually optional as far as in which direction they wanted to go with regulating and charging for it. But it's all in the documentation, and frankly, I don't envy the Select Board for having to make a final decision on those. It was a very difficult thing to develop. There were so many, and I want to make sure that Gary Lindbergh is recognized. He did a lot of legwork on finding out what other towns are doing and what the state is requiring. And the state has been very absent on the discussion because they don't want to touch it because it's very difficult. So it is a difficult thing that the Select Board has to decide. And I support them in whatever way they want to go. That's all. If anybody has a question, I'll try, but I didn't think this was going to be a long discussion because...
Robin has a comment or a question.
So my intent is to bring this to vote to all of you to decide on whether or not you want to change the zoning. Whether my fellow board members decide that is what should happen. You know, you'll see, but I encourage you to keep an eye on this, to get a draft of what it is, look through it, come to a meeting and discuss it. Let us know what you'd like in it, what you'd like out of it, and learn about it before you actually do vote on it. Because if that's the direction we all decide to go, I think we've been pretty clear that we'd like to bring it to vote to the town's voting community. So please do pick up a draft, look at it, and see what you think about it. Because it really does affect every one of your properties. And it's really important that you all have a say in what this new zoning looks like.
Yes.
As this is written in the book, that's not law yet?
No, absolutely
Correct,
not.
it has to be voted on to change zoning regulations.
So
Has to be voted
we have
on.
Susan and then Chris.
I think I have this right, that procedurally, the planning commission has presented it to us. I think our next step is that we need to hold a couple of public hearings about it, and those would be duly warned, and we're desperate to have your feedback to come to these meetings. And I don't think it's, I can't really say for sure, but it seems like if the select board was going to take an action, we would have. My feeling with Robin is that we would like it to be something that the town votes on, and you, the people, can decide. But we do have to have at least one public hearing, right, Joe?
Yeah, Chris.
I just want to emphasize, when we get to discussing this, when you get to those hearings, come with your suggestions in specific language. We spend a lot of meetings going round and round with opinions, and people getting upset. What we really need is to have you come with a definite opinion, written out, and something you definitely want changed.
And I would just add to that, not as the moderator, but as a citizen. I attended 2 of the meetings, and Joe did a great job. It was a tough task. The select board was largely there. They did a good job coming to those public meetings. And people were really trying to chew on this. And I think all the suggestions that you heard that night, you really took seriously and tried to incorporate into this language, balancing the fact that we want to preserve the character of Andover. Times are changing. A lot of us here remember when gas was under 50 cents a gallon. That ain't the case anymore. So lots of things have changed. It's not like we can go back to 1947. So I thought Joe and his committee did a great job dealing with a kind of an overwhelming issue. There's also a corporate entity at play here. The short-term rental platforms are not run in Andover, and they're not run in Montpelier. They're global. So it's a very tricky kind of thing to get your arms around. Yes, Jeanette.
Lenore Schumann would like to say something.
Hi, Lenore. This is John.
Hi there. Hi, I unmuted, so I hope the dogs don't bark. As a member of the zoning board, I just want to bring up the fact that we've been reminded of more than once, which is that if we don't act on this, then anybody who is running a business in this town is running a business illegally, because we have a list of businesses that you can run. And if you are running a rental business, and I'm talking primarily about the corporations that are coming in, or anybody who is, I'm not talking about the people who are renting a room, and that may be a gray area, but if your house is rented on a regular basis, part-time, then you're running a business that you need to get permission to run and a permit to run. And we have a list in the zoning regulations of what businesses there are. And you can refer to them. I mean, you can have a gas station, you can have a daycare center, you can have an inn, but if you do any of those things, you need a permit, you need permission. And the people on Steigers will remember how hard it was for them to fight the fact that somebody wanted to have a business on Steigers. Maybe there's a restaurant there, but we had to let them do it because it was on the list of things they could do, but it was still permitted. And so if we go on forever like this, what we're doing without regulations is allowing people to say, there's no rules. We can just run any business we want in Andover because the permitting isn't enforced. So I don't have a horse in the race about what the regulations are, but I'm very concerned as a member of the zoning board that we continue to close our eyes to the fact people are running businesses that we're not permitting. And it was brought up, for example, well, I could have a wedding on my property if I live there, but you can't have a wedding on your property because it's a short-term renter. Yeah, but if you're running a wedding business, then it's not on the list of permitted activities. And we could change that. We can totally change the zoning to allow that. But right now you can't run a wedding business. And so the people who are neighbors to these wedding businesses have a right to complain. So although we don't want any changes, you know, in some larger way, we want to have Andover as it always was, but it can't be as it always was if corporations are buying our homes and renting them out and not getting permits. So I just want to throw that out there, that to ignore it to me is not a possibility. So as the select board decides over the coming year, and I do recommend that, I mean, we already made some changes in a sort of a first stab at a rough draft of a regulation. And the first time we had a meeting about it, people had opinions, and you can see in the book that there's some lines crossed out, and that was based on what happened at the meeting. Citizens came, they had opinions. We met again, we said, well, let's cross those things out. They're, you know, they don't like that. Fine, let's submit that. And the process is, we submitted a draft to the select board because it has to start somewhere. Nobody on zoning is married to that draft, but I personally am married to the idea that we need a regulation. Otherwise, everybody who runs a business is breaking some kind of rule. And we need to set that rule so that we can have it the way we want it to be. That's my opinion.
Thanks, Lenore. I want to just make the point, we really do need to, I'll get to you in a moment, we do need to begin to wrap it up because folks are going to start to fade. This has been a good discussion. Thank you, George, for reminding us to get back on this. If there's anybody in town, anybody here tonight who doesn't receive Andover, is it still called Andover Word, the email list, see Jeanette. And then Jeanette will make sure that information, they already put out reminders of our select board meetings. You get times, dates. If you're not getting that, you should, and you should absolutely come to these meetings to, again, to quote Chris, spend some time doing some work before you go, and then bring a real solution. It's a very complex issue. Now, Paul, and then this gentleman here.
If someone provided an electronic document of this draft to the email listserv, can they distribute it?
Andover has a brand new website, and Jeanette has put
It's on the
everything on the website.
website.
The town of Andover.
And like, thank you for whoever made the new website. Because
Can you introduce yourself again? I'm sorry.
Jason. Northville.
Yeah.
Just real quickly, Lenore said that it's not permitted. That's why they're running illegal businesses. Are long-term rentals permitted? Yes. They are?
Yeah.
Yeah, they're all listed as permitted uses in the zoning regulations.
The answer is they're on the list of permitted
Okay,
uses.
well, then, all right.
Yeah, very brief question.
Very brief. Lenore hit the nail on the head. Absent a permit, the existing short-term rentals owned by absentee owners are illegal. And I would also note for your group, every home that is sold and converted to short-term rental is one less home available for a full-time resident.
Amen. Yeah, Jeanette. Maddie, you're on.
Hi, everybody.
Maddie, hi.
Hi, I just want to, not the moderator. Can you hear me? I'm not the moderator of Andover 250 or Andover Word anymore, but it's important for people to know that first, it's not run by the town. Second, there are no announcements of select board meetings on there, and there are no agendas for the select board meetings on there. So I encourage everyone to sign up. We've got 2 new moderators, Sid and Adam. They are awesome. But if you're looking for select board information, I think the Andover Town website is the place to go. Thanks.
Thank you for that clarification. Thanks, Maddie. Thank you all for your patience. I would now entertain, I think we just entertained the motion from Mr. Heiler to adjourn. Do we have a second? Paul seconds. All